old Bill Haynes, who was trying to sell it to a client of mine. And there were 320 acres. And the road stopped back there at first house on the right, so we had to walk over here through the woods, and I saw this real pretty little creek running down here, which I found out later is the headwaters of the Cahaba River. And we bought the property, and we first decided that we would just build a 10-acre lake for our own pleasure. But the more we built, the better it looked, and so we just decided to build the present lake, which is 45 acres. We built this dam, which is 232 feet wide and 32 feet high. And you see what it has done from that little start.
How long did it take to build the dam?
We started on the dam in the midsummer of 1950, and it was completed in December of that year. And right after we got it completed, we had a terrible flood came, and the water came all the way up on top of the dam, and we were scared to death, thought we was going to lose it, because at that time we didn't have a paved road and the dam was new. So as a result of that, we doubled the spillway to protect it, and I think that that's what has saved us. This is a tremendous watershed. It goes all the way past Echo Lake there, and it's just when they have a flood on this little river, it really comes up.
What's the name of the river?
The Cahaba River.
Where does it begin?
It begins at two springs, about 1.25 miles from here. And those two springs flow together where the Echo Lake Dam is, and so now it flows out of Echo Lake and through the little river down to here. And it flows out of this lake through our spillway and a valve and goes right on down through Trussville and eventually ends up into the Alabama River at Selma.
That's quite something. What was the original cost of the lake?
Well, we paid $17.50 an acre for 320 acres, but when the dam was almost finished, we found that we had encroached on Mr. Carroll's land right here in this corner, about 8 feet. So it took $500 to buy that last acre.
What did the dam cost?
I don't remember what the dam cost, but the cost of the property and the dam and the road around it and the engineering was about close to $60,000. Now you couldn't buy one vacant lot on this lake for less than $25,000 if somebody would sell it to you.
Oh, Walter, I'm sure there's a lot of history around the lake, and a lot of it can be pointed out looking at some of the houses, who the original tenants were. Okay.
This is our caretaker's house. It was built about 8 or 10 years after we built the lake. Our first caretaker was named Fred Sullivan, and he lived with his brother-in-law or brother in this first house that you come to coming into the lake. His name was Roscoe Sullivan. Fred was an old bachelor, a widower or something, and he lived here, and as you can see, the first house stopped right by that window. Then we added on another room when Mr. Cliff Daly became our caretaker. He is the second caretaker we've had and has been with us now about 21 years, I think. Jim Marbury, who was one of the stockholders at that time, built a little house with his own labor, and I think it didn't cost us but about $2,000 originally, but now it's a right nice little house.
Well, I remember that first caretaker. He was a card.
Yeah. Fred would do everything but work. No question about it. He started working for us when we were building the dam, and his job was to pile up the limbs and trees that we were taking out of the lake bed and get them burned. And he did a pretty good job of that, so we made him caretaker. And he stayed here until he started drawing his Social Security.
Why is that pretty
Yes, yes.
Hello, you pretty thing.
That's Reno.
Oh, you're a beautiful dog. Yes, she is. She's beautiful, Walter.
All right, Miss Hackett, come over here.
Don't let her get too fat.
She's not too fat, is she?
She's getting that way.
Oh, she's not.
You get her some fit and trim.
I'll keep her fit and trim.
All right, they have fit and trim, and I mix it up with regular dog chow, Purina
Miss
type.
Hackett,
Yeah.
when did you buy?
When did I buy this house?
I mean, when was this? When y'all?
When did we buy this lot?
Uh-huh.
When Hank was about 4 years old.
You got a year?
Well, he's 30. How old are you, Hank? He was born 1950.
And when did
About 1954.
when did you build your house?
Built the house in 1963.
You put an addition onto it, didn't you?
Yeah, I put an addition on about, 3 or 4 years ago.
You got one lot or two lots?
I have 2 lots. Well, what are you doing? Is that sound equipment too?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
10 acres and lots of dead pines, we'll put it that way.
Well, we don't
Might
talk-
that might as well go in on your documentary.
And beautiful wildflowers.
Yeah.
Beautiful wildflowers.
Okay,
This, of course, is the Jackson residence, which was built about 1953. It was the first house built at Lake in the Woods, built by Frank and Mildred Bainbridge. Frank Bainbridge was one of the 3 original incorporators of Highland Lake Land Company. They built this house and had a housewarming on New Year's Day, I think 1953. And they invited a whole lot of their friends out, and those friends fell in love with the lake, and I think about 8 of them bought lots here.
we didn't get those friends drunk at the party.
Well, they were a little bit inebriated, and if whiskey hadn't run out, I think we'd have sold a whole lot more lots. You also notice they have added a guest house up here, and then the flagpole. Are you going to pan on that?
No, I've already taken the flagpole.
Flagpole there has just been erected in memory of Frank.
Walter?
All right, this is a residence of Frank Kennedy. The house was the second house on the lake that was built, and interestingly enough, it was built from the timber that came out of an old church from a mining town down in the vicinity of Helena somewhere. The mine had worked out, and the mining company sold all the houses, and Ben Cubbage bought the timber out of that church and brought it up here and built his house. This house was built by the same contractor, Mr. Miller, who built the Bainbridge house.
You remember about when this was built?
I would guess about either late 53 or 54.
These folks used to share a well water, didn't they?
Yes, there was one well that served the Bainbridge house, the caretaker's house, and the next house, which we used to refer to as a Marbury house.
We're going to go to that next.
Yeah, we go to that next.
Shut down that I charged $100 a piece on. I need some documentation. Thank you, sir.
Okay, Walter, tell us about this house.
All right, this house is the residence of Jimmy Stewart, Jr., who's vice president of our lake at this time. It was originally built by James Marbury. Jim Marbury was one of the original stockholders in the lake, and built this for his family, and it has only changed hands one time. And I'd like for you to take a look at that boathouse down there. That's the first boathouse built on Lake in the Woods.
Talk to me.
That's the first boathouse that was ever built on Lake in the Woods. Jim Marbury built it, and of course, as you can see, it was built out of, what do you call that material there? Some kind of metal siding. And when it was first built, it shined like a church house on a stormy night, and everybody thought Jim had ruined the lake. So he came in and painted it, and now it's just as attractive as any other boathouse on the lake.
Who bought this house?
Jim, who bought the house from the Marburys?
Right.
Jimmy Stewart,
Oh.
Junior.
Huh? Is he one of the new landlords here?
Jimmy is one of the new landlords here. He's vice president of Lake in the Woods. Next to me, he's one of the best fishermen out here.
Tell me about this house, Walter.
All right, this is a Listerman's residence, and I think this was the latest house that's been built on the lake. The lot was originally purchased from Dr. Wade Klein, and when Els Listerman bought it some 10 years ago, he built this house on it here. Dr. Klein built the boathouse and little lake house down there, and Els added a residence. We're now looking at the Jenkins lot. This lot was originally bought by John A. Buck Jenkins, I think, who was one of the first 10 stockholders on the lake. When Buck died, he left it to his wife Louise, and she still owns it, and it's enjoyed by her daughter and her son. There's not a house on it, but they come out here and really enjoy the lake.
You books are gonna hurt me. Tell me about this house, Walter.
All right, this is the home of J.D. Stewart Sr. It was originally purchased and built by Bill and Vivian Post. One of the early houses on the lake. I'd say it was built about 1955, 54 perhaps. You remember Vivian Post was an interior decorator of some renown, and they built the little lake house down there on the right first, and then they built their residence up here. When Mrs. Post died, she left it to her sister, and her sister then sold it to J.D. Stewart. J.D. Stewart and his wife are one of our most loyal Lakers. J.D. is a retired engineer and has been a great help to us.
What was the business that Mr. Post was in?
Mr. Post owned Post Welding Supply Company for many, many years.
It was a big outfit, wasn't it?
Yes, it is and still is. Very prominent business in Birmingham.
They sure gave some good parties at this house.
I had the pleasure of enjoying some of those parties. I know Ruth had some company coming out here one time, and I'd been fishing, and they stopped by and they were serving gin and tonics down on the lake, and I had one too many, and I never did get to meet her guest, and I never have outlived it.
Right.
We're now looking at Sue Bigler's residence. Sue is affectionately known by all the young people around the lake as Mama Sue. This house was built by Leo and Cora Bashinsky. They were the original purchasers and built the house, and I remember well when Mrs. Bashinsky was looking at this house, she asked me if there were any snakes out here, and I told her that there were very few. And she turned to her husband Leo and said, "Leo, you've got to build a snake fence around this house. I don't want my grandchildren getting bit."
Where's the fence?
Well, the fence never did get built, so the snakes are still running free.
Is there a second house behind this house?
Yes, Hugh Bigler built that guest house out there with his own hands and tools, and Hugh worked hard and long on it, and he was very proud of it, and so are we. It's a lovely place. We're now looking at the lake home of Yetha and Barbara Spradley. They purchased this house from Archie Witt, and it was originally built by Charles McCauley. This house has changed hands more than any house on the lake, not because it's got anything wrong with it, but everybody that bought this house has improved it. And I think the Spradlings have really done more for it than anyone else. It was owned by John Israel at one time, it was owned by Ed Mollison at one time, and now the Spradlings have it.
It's a pretty big lot, ain't it?
Well, all these lots got a front on the lake of a little more than 200 feet, and all of them go back about 200 or 300 feet north. They're all big lots. This is where Ruth and I live. We built this house about 15 years ago, maybe more. and we bought the lot from Joe and Sarah Morpus. We were looking for a log house, and we finally found plans for this house. It's really just a big Lincoln log house made out of redwood logs. And we have enjoyed it. This is the home of Sarah Silverfield. It was originally built by Mrs. Bell Gillespie. Lived in it for quite a number of years, and then it was bought by Joe and Sarah Morpus. It has changed hands only one time since the house was built.
When do you think it was built?
I expect that house was built, about 20 years ago, which would be 1960.
Well, we got music on this one.
Yes, this is the Lake Cottage of George and Isabel Maynard. This lot was originally bought by Mr. Albert Lee Smith, Sr. He gave it to his son, Congressman Albert Lee Smith, and Albert Lee, Jr. sold it to George Maynard.
There's no house on this lot, is it?
No house on this lot other than the Lake Cottage and the boathouse, which the Maynards have fixed up and made very attractive.
I see they got the flag flying.
Yep.
I'm surprised Isabel would let that stay up. This the bridge?
This is a bridge. Believe it or not, this is a bridge across the big Cahaba River. At this time of the year, it's just a trickle of water coming down. It comes down from Echo Lake, flows into Lake in the Woods, out of Lake in the Woods, and on down the river, as I explained a while ago.
Kind of dusty right now, isn't it?
You could ride a bicycle up it right now.
Well, I've seen the water really coming out of this stream in the spring.
When we have a spring flood, that little river is 6, 8 feet deep coming down through here, and it's a tremendous watershed.
I think this is one of the prettiest stretches of the road around the lake, because sometimes in the fall, in the setting sun, that sun filters through this section and really gives a very beautiful light.
It is one of the prettiest sections of the road. Right in this section here, our lake road is built on the old roadbed of an old road that's on the early maps that ran from Argo into Clay and Clay to Pinson. You notice that old beech tree there on the right? That was there when the original road was here, and people have carved their initials in it. And this road went across the lake about where the Bainbridge's place is, and came across that valley right up through the Hassinger lot and the caretaker's house. Of course, we curved our road around to the left and didn't stay on it very long.
This is built by Mr. Sanford?
Yes, Mr. Frank Sanford was one of the early stockholders. He bought 2 lots on this little point of the lake here. And the first house he built burned down. Mr. Sanford turned right around and rebuilt this house, and it was sold to Frank and Philippa Bainbridge.
Now, he had a sort of a happy disagreement about the lake people down here and how they handle the quality of the water, didn't he?
Well, not really. Mr. Sanford never had fished any when he moved to Lake in the Woods, and he began to fish and enjoyed it, and he wanted to fertilize the big lake so that the fishing would improve. Of course, when you fertilize a lake, it gets green and discolored and not very good to swim in. So in order to overcome that problem, he just went up the mountain to the south and bought approximately 40 acres and built a 5-acre lake up there that he enjoyed fishing in.
Can we take a look at it?
Oh, yes.
So this is the 40 acres that Mr. Sanford bought.
Yes, this is a little lake that was built by Mr. Sanford. We called our big lake Lake in the Woods, and Mr. Sanford named this Lake in the Backwoods. He built it and kept it well stocked with fish, and he would come up here and get off by himself, and he told me that he would rather be here than any place he'd ever been in the world. When before Mr. Sanford died, I had agreed to buy the lake from him just on a shake-hand basis, and then Mrs. Sanford called me after he died, told me that he had told her that he wanted me to buy a lake in his little lake, and so I did, and still have it.
Well, I remember seeing bubbles come out of that lake one time.
Well, Mr. Sanford had so many fish in here at one time, he had a fish kill, and so somebody told him that the lake needed aerating, so he got a pump and put in the boathouse here and pumped the water up on that high hill there, and then he would let it flow down back into the water. Then he took a perforated pipe and put all around the lake and pumped air into the pipe. You'd see bubbles coming up all over the lake to keep it aerated.
Any fish in this lake?
Well, there's a lot of fish in there, Corey, but sometimes they're awfully stubborn. They're hard to find, but yes, the lake's well stocked. The green color is due to the fertilizer that we put in it. This is the way a big lake would look if we'd fertilize a big lake, and then nobody would want to swim in it.
Well, this looks like a concrete house here.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes, this is a lake home Shirley and her husband bought Isabel. It was built by Shirley's father, Mr. George McCullough, who was in the concrete products business, and that house is solid masonry construction. The only wood on it are the doors and a little bit of trim on the front of the house there. It's massively built with concrete beams, and I think that's a good place for me to go if I ever have a bomb up here.
Can I offer you all a Bloody Mary?
Thank you. We're doing a little documentary of your house.
Well, that's fine, but you can also you can do it with Bloody Mary in one hand, can't you?
Do it a lot better, Bart.
Won't you have one?
No, we got to run on. Much obliged.
This house too hard to take a photograph of, so we'll just take a picture of the sign, tell us a little history on it.
Well, we're at the rear entrance of the house, and it's the home of Mr. and Mrs. Enid Camp. The house was originally built by Dr. Tom Stroud, who was one of the early stockholders of the lake. And if you can see the house, you'll notice that it has expanded as Enid's grandchildren have expanded, and now it's a real big house.
Are they the single owner on this one?
This house has changed hands only one time. Dr. Stroud was the original owner, and the Camps are the present owner.
Right. And next to the camps, headed west, there's a vacant lot. Whose lot's that?
That belongs to Dr. Lawrence, who has had it, since about 1955 or 1956. His lot belonged to, what's that damn lawyer's name? Francis here.
Well, anyway.
I can't think of it. I've forgotten the original owner's name, but Dr. Lawrence has had it since that time.
Well, I think we're about to have a dog fight. This is Roebuck's.
That's right, Bobby and Mary Roebuck. This house was originally built by Mr. John D. Hey! Hush that racket. Hush that racket. You ready?
Yeah.
Had a little dog fight there, slight interruption, but this house was built by Colonel John D. Hill. Mary and Bobby have expanded it and improved it, and it's a beautiful house.
Well, Colonel Hill was a big fisherman he thought, didn't he?
Oh yeah, Colonel was a big fisherman. He used to keep the water in front of his pier baited out there, and I used to slip over here and catch his fish. And he was a big fisherman.
This looks like a new house.
Well, most of it is. This is the home of Al and Bobby Barron. It was originally built by Jim and Edwina Evans, but the Barrons have added on to both sides of it, improved it, made a beautiful house out of it. It's new for all practical purposes because I think they've redone every bit of it.
Well, Mr. Barron has done a lot for the lake recently. Two major.
Mr. Barron has been a great benefactor. His latest contribution to the lake is the automatic opener on our gate, and before that he designed and built and installed a new valve down at the dam. So we are deeply indebted to Al Barron.
All right, we went ahead and passed the Thuston house because we couldn't get a good shot from it, but give us a little history on it.
Well, the Thuston house was built by Elmer and his wife, Emmy Thuston. Not too long ago, about 2 years ago, they gave it to their 3 sons, who are the present owners of it. And if those Thuston boys keep on having children, that house is going to be as big as a camp house for much longer.
Well, there's a lot of history in this lake.
Yeah, there's 31 years of it, and every bit of it has been very, very interesting, at least to me it has.
Sort of give me an outline of where the boundaries are.
Our property line goes almost to the crest of the 2 mountains, which incidentally are Red Mountain, as shown on the map, and Red Mountain on the right and Red Mountain on the left. We do not go over the crest on either side of the lake. We've got about 1.25 miles east and west, but we're not too wide north and south.
Well, you think if you walk down this valley and saw all this raw land that you'd do it all over again?
Yeah, I sure do. I think I would, because it's been a wonderful project, been very gratifying to me. Right out here in front of us here in this lake bed was about a 10-acre blackberry patch the first time I saw it. And it didn't look then like it looks now.
You don't think they use those blackberries to make wine or some sipping whiskey up in this holler?
No, they didn't use the blackberries, but they used a lot of mash. There were 3 stills on the place when we bought it. One old one right where Sanford's house is, and 2 up the creek on our property. One was a real live still at that time. Right after we bought the place, the revenue people raided it, and I was scared to death that the fellas that owned it would think that I had done it and come down here and blow our dam out, but they never did.
Well, a little bit later this afternoon, I'm going to take a boat ride around the lake and show everybody what the front of the houses look like.
Well, I think that'd be a good idea, Corey, because we were just looking in the back door of all of them on the south side, and they are prettier from the front.